Yo, Ted, you buying into all this Warlock hype?
Well, mechanically, they are, different from the other spellcasters. And thematically, I think they can be really fun to play.
I don't know, man. They're really rest dependent.
What if you had a whole adventuring party of Warlocks?
Well, that might be a fun thing to discuss. Then they all need to rest all the time. So let's talk about D&D Adventuring Party composition, All Warlock Adventuring Party. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Maybe it's your first time visiting Ted's Basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Hey, sometimes we even talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and to tune to that notification bell.
All right, before we jump into our party of all Warlocks, we got to take a moment and shout out and thank our sponsors, Necromancer Games, which is owned by Frog God Games, and it kind of like Necromancer or Frog God Games came from Necromancer Games. I don't know, but they're back and they have a new Kickstarter. We're huge fans of Frog God Games and the products they put out. Necromancer Games has been around since 3rd edition, creating third-party content, and they have their Tome of Horrors 2020. The cover for this thing is fantastic. It is a skeletal warrior bedecked in plate armor with a crown upon his head, sitting on a throne with his big, gnarly, iron-looking sword. And there's like 250 monsters in this bad boy. The art that they are showing so far looks amazing. They are about 70%, 75% funded at this point when we're shooting this video. By the time this video goes live, they will probably be moving into stretch goals, I can only imagine.
I can only imagine.
But yeah, they're pulling out monsters that they made for 3rd edition, Pathfinder, Swords and Wizardry. So I'm really excited to get this product in my hands. And they also have cool tokens.
So the tokens are going to be, right along with it. You can be able to print out and use right in your game. There's going to be stretch goals. Stretch goals are a combination of adding more monsters to the book as well as additional mini adventures that are going to be available as a PDF. There's a separate add-on that you can get if you want to get those softcover, book with those adventures in it. There's so many great things that you can do with this Kickstarter. Who doesn't need more monsters to add to their game? I'm all about getting the copy for myself and for the shelf. So do us a favor, help the channel by checking out our sponsors. Check out the link to that Kickstarter in the description down below.
All right, now I'm going to move away from the Kickstarter page and into D&D Beyond so I can pull up Warlock so we can discuss what it would look like to have a all Warlock adventuring party. So our subclasses are Archfey, Celestial, Fiend, Great Old One, Hexblade, and Undying. So we get 6 of them.
So our typical adventuring party is usually 5. So you could technically squeeze in a 6th player and have one of each of these in your party and have a really cool and interesting party dynamic.
You could, but if you have 6 players and you have an extra player, I suggest leaving off Undying and double down on one of the other ones. Because when we went through them, that was kind of the worst. So now kind of looking at them and breaking them down, Archfey is our charmer or just deceiver.
The Celestial, obviously, this is the one that's going to get access to Cure Wounds. So that's going to be your healer. They're going to be the ones that are going to get access to some of the buff magic that you wouldn't normally be able to have as a Warlock.
And then the Pact of the Fiend is going to be your blaster or even a bit tankier.
The Great Old One, this is going to give you access to some control and utility magic. They're all about, that mind manipulation, so you can have a lot of fun with that one.
Hexblade is up next, and that is going to be having more of your martial bent. So this is going to be kind of your tankier because of having a higher armor class, as well as they're also going to, like if you're talking 4th edition terms or maybe even video game terms, you're looking at striker or DPS, they're going to be able to actually hit a bit harder.
Your Undying does have some abilities to kind of survive in combat. They do have some tanking abilities to increase their hit points, but as Dave says, mechanically it is not as good as some of the other classes, even if I think some of the things there are fun and thematic.
Now, we had already in this series experimented with the Bard, and the Bard was really easy because the Bard is good at doing a lot of things. The Warlock is not. So, with the Warlock, we actually have to look a little bit deeper. And one of the things we want to look at is backgrounds and races, feats as well, where you can shore up some of the weak spots in order to make your all Warlock party work.
So backgrounds, there are things that you're going to have to be able to look at. You're going to want to get access to certain skills that are not available to the Warlock class. For when we did Bard had access to all skills, so they could spread out and then spread out even further with your backgrounds. But you will need to make sure your backgrounds are tied and tight to be able to get access to skills that are outside of Warlock. Specifically, you are again want to look at either Urchin or Criminal so that you have somebody who's got access to Thieves' tools.
Now, not only that, Charlatan as well as Outlander would be useful as well for different reasons. Outlanders will help with the exploration pillar of the game, and Charlatan also helps with, kind of more like the espionage type stuff that you might want to do.
And Charlatan is something that's going to fit really well with the Warlock because, Warlocks for the most part are going to be charisma-based characters. So getting access to those charisma skills there will allow you to branch out into other Warlock skills.
Okay, for races, Azamar, Changeling, Goblin. All of these are going to be super useful. Azamar is going to give you some more healing abilities. Changeling gives you more skills to be for a more skill heavy character, and also again talking about if you want to use more like espionage type stuff, or Goblin will give you access to some abilities that will kind of make you rogue light. So I think all three of them could shore up some weak spots.
Half-elf and human are going to give you access to some more of those skill options. Half-elf is going to pair nicely because it already has that +2 to charisma. But I mean, if you're looking to make your tanks, you're going to want to give something that's already got access to armor class. So going Turtle or Warforged, any of those options are going to be strong. Warforged Envoy is going to give you access to that nice charisma bonus. Gonna get a skill and a tool there. It's really good get for what you can go in those directions.
Yeah, not only that, human, the variant having access to feats is also going to actually just bring us into the next section where we can talk about feats and how they can also be useful in shoring up some areas.
All right, so we have several different things. Number one, you have very limited access to healing magic. So the healer feat is going to be super helpful. I already say as a pro tip for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that you want to have healer's kits on you all the time. There is no reason why that shouldn't be your first stop when you get into town. And when you've got someone with a healer feat, that's going to turn those things into free healing because it's not using your spell slots. But if you're looking to make those tanky characters, for your Hexblade, who already has medium armor proficiency, heavily armored is going to give you that proficiency, especially if you're looking at Warforged, because that's going to give us, essentially armor that I can just, when I long rest, I just put on the heavier armor. I don't need to spend any gold to get it. And then heavy armor master is going to give you that, that damage reduction, which is going to be really helpful.
So then that brings us to 3 more feats that are going to be, I don't want to say must-haves, but they're going to be super useful. Inspiring Leader, Magic Initiate, and Spell Sniper. So what Inspiring Leader is going to do, anytime you take a rest, and we're already dependent on rest anyway, we can give a speech, and then we're going to gain temporary hit points for basically the whole party, and it's based off of charisma, and you are a charisma caster, so this is a great synergy. You're going to get a lot of use from it because you're a warlock and you want to rest as much as possible, so this makes the whole adventuring party slightly more tanky. Then we have Magic Initiate. This is going to give us access to more magic, and warlocks don't get quite as much as other casters, so this becomes really useful in giving us some more cantrips and also another first level spell slot. Now, the pro tip here is to make sure you take it from the Bard, Sorcerer, or Warlock list because you want to be a charisma caster. So even if you're going for healing magic, take it from the Bard, not the Cleric. Plus, if you take it from the bard, then you can get things like vicious mockery and other fun bard stuff.
Save your healer's kits, for stabilizing. Don't worry about cantrip for spare the dying.
There you go. And then Spell Sniper, another cantrip, and it's just going to make our ranged attack spells that much better. Like Eldritch Blast. So, it's going to be super, super, super useful.
All right, so we mentioned, all of these different, mechanical choices. We mentioned all of the different subclasses, but we kind of, skipped over, all the things that Warlocks get, and that's going to be our Pact boons.
Yeah, there's 3 different Pact boons, and you're going to mix these up. You Pact the Blade is making the character more martial. Probably your Hexblade is going to benefit from going with that. Pact the Chain, that's going to be if you want a familiar, and that's going to give you a spy or a scout, which can be useful, or someone to constantly give the help action to your party to make them a little bit more effective.
Pact of the Tome, this is going to be absolutely necessary that somebody in your party, goes this way, because this is going to give you access to, ritual magic, getting access to all those spells. And we'll touch on the invocations, but you definitely want to get that invocation to expand your Book of Shadows, because, there is so much magic, and the ritual Book of Shadows is the best ritual caster in the game. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be going in that direction.
It's literally the reason why when we're talking about feats, we did not put ritual caster on it, because you just might as well go Pact of the Tome and take the invocation that is going to make you the ultimate ritual caster in a game anyway. So that's a great utility feature.
That invocation, because we're going to get into that, it's called the Book of Ancient Secrets. You're definitely going to want to make sure that somebody in the party has that, because it's going to add so much more magical repertoire in there. You don't have to worry about having the skills detect magic, identify Liam's Tiny Hut. All of these are great ritual spells that can be used regularly, and you won't be using any magic spell slots to do that. And Beguiling Influence is going to add additional skills onto your character that you can be able to regularly use. Definitely a good get there.
Agonizing Blast, you're probably going to have one or more of your Warlocks taking this one, because it adds your charisma modifier to the damage. And there's a whole slew of invocations that you can tack on to your Eldritch Blast to make it better and better. Eldritch Spear doubles the range. Then you take Spell Sniper, doubles the range again. So now you're hitting things at 600 feet. It's ridiculous. There's a ton of cool things with that. And really, when you're looking at your invocations, you're going to break them down into like the utility, the combat, the additional spell casting. And you're going to want to split this up amongst the party so that you're not taking all of the same things. And you can cover a wide swath of areas of expertise. So I feel like a party of Warlocks, if you really work together in choosing your invocations, you're going to have a lot of spaces covered. There's going to be a lot of stuff you can do. It's going to make for really an interesting adventuring party.
Yeah, so I highly recommend that, doing, a session 0, meeting together as the group of players and discussing how you want to level up your characters together. So rather than sharing rather than not sharing and keeping, my Warlock's all about a mystery, no, you want to mechanically assemble together so that you've got a stronger party because of it. So last up we have for invocations, it's going to be Thirsting Blade. This is going to be for your Hexblade. This is going to be for your martial characters, the ones who have got the Pact of the Blade. This is what you're looking at. This is what you're going to need. It's kind of necessary.
You need that extra attack for sure. So, so essentially what our party of Warlocks is going to look like. We're going to have an Archfey, we're going to have a Celestial, we are going to have a Fiend, we are going to have a Hexblade. That gives us a party of 4. Great old one if you have a 5th. If you have a 6th, there is Undying, but I recommend you take something else.
I would take a second Hexblade.
A second Hexblade, or any of the others, really, just anything but. Even the Celestial Warlock would be really good in comparison. But, that would make a tight party as far as that goes, especially when you start looking at feats, invocations, different races. You can cover a lot of bases. Now the question is, from the DM side, how do we put together this party? How do we create adventures for all Warlocks? Why are all these goth boys and gals all hanging out together and they're all from technically, they all have different patrons, so they don't necessarily go together.
So here's one of the things that I was thinking about. The cosmos is in turmoil. Something is happening, and each of these things that you're kind of attached to some extent, does care about what happens on the prime material plane. Perhaps one of these powers is just wants to be there to witness. Perhaps majority of them want to see that the prime actually survives, but all of them have a hand in and care about what's going on. So for a cosmic threat, for a big challenge, maybe the mortals have no idea what's going to happen, but these agents need to be guided and put into place to stop this threat. The players don't have to come upon it for a long time. Build up to it. Wait till they have been confused by all these other phony main plots that you've thrown out there. But the cosmos is in turmoil, and finally the patrons have step in and have a voice and say, look, this is why you're here. You must deal with this, or the world is peril. I hate going, to the big thing early. You gotta save that, till late game, so that they understand that, oh crap, these beings have been guiding and pushing us in a direction together for a reason. You've got that unveil, and it's gonna be so much cooler.
All right, I like that, but also I'm also thinking, well, Warlocks and Warlock patrons are all about deals and bargains and contracts, right? So what if this group of 4 to 6 individuals are summoned by a particular individual, and they're holding a stack of contracts? They have bought, brokered, wheeled and dealed, and they now own the contracts to each one of these. They still have the power that's being drawn from their patrons, but their allegiance has been sold to this individual. They could be someone that's more powerful. They could be lesser powerful. There's no telling in the early phases of how they came to hold the Pact contracts. It's just that they do. And now instead of serving the patron, they have to serve this individual, and they all have to work together for whatever it is they're doing. In my mind, I'm almost thinking like a heist campaign, and it's all building up to this grand heist. And this individual needed to assemble a specific team with a specific set of abilities. And that's why these
I'm sorry, you say that, I just go right to A-Team.
Yes. It's like the Warlock version of the A-Team. Even the Jim Butcher book, Dresden Files. I forget the name of the novel where Nicodemus assembles a team to pull a heist off in Skin Game, yep. In the lower plains, that's where I'm kind of drawing inspiration from. Ocean's 11, any of those, but with Warlocks instead.
I love that idea, Dave, that that the contracts have been shunted, and it could be temporary, or it could be like this guy's an utter a-hole, and you've got to try to find somebody else. You got to do this mission, but then you got to find some way to get somebody else to have your contract just so you can stop working for this guy.
Yeah, like there might be a subplot where you're all trying to get back your contracts or get back with your patron or whatever. Be like, Daddy, why did you trade me away? I don't get it. I thought we had a good thing.
So there's a lot of fun role playing that could happen between the characters and this NPC, the characters and their patron. Perhaps there's some methodology in here, or some way that the characters could observe a conversation between the NPC and their patron. You could have a lot of fun with those little things. And we're talking about, a really bizarre party. But I think that's a great story.
So with that, how would you assemble this team? How would you use this party? Which would you play? We've got a place where we can discuss it down in the comments below. But before we head on out, let me take a moment to invite you to join the Nerdarchy Adventuring Party over on Patreon. Ted, what can I expect over there?
We're creating products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that players and DMs alike can drop right into their game.
But that's not all. We do monthly giveaways, and our patrons are automatically entered.
We do weekly hangouts with our patrons and more.
Quest on down to the description. Join the Nerdarchy Adventuring Party on Patreon. And until next time,
stay nerdy.